Hello, welcome to another video on alias modeling. Today we're gonna do a wheel. And the focus of this class is really more about sketch modeling, not so much designing or class A modeling a wheel, because when you're inside of a design studio, a lot of times the most important part isn't so much making it a production ready model, because that takes a really long time, but the real value comes from being able to sort of 3D model these different designs extremely quickly. So I try to keep it all under basically one workday, and I've actually modeled rims inside of studios in less than a day, and they end up becoming the initial model, which would later become the a production wheel. So this video is really gonna be more about how I sort of get the form in my head and how I make it so that we could visualize it and 3D print it or do anything we want with it quickly. And that's the whole point of this video. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm gonna try to keep everything as quickly as possible, but you know my videos are always really long. It's a long process, but I think there's a lot of little nuggets of knowledge there. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Whenever you're modeling a wheel inside of a car design studio, usually you will get some sort of engineering package, kind of like this, that kind of gives you the thickness of the wheel, the height, what type of thickness your spokes need to be. And right now, I'm just sort of playing around with that data just to get that model in my head. You know, that's one of the biggest parts about 3D modeling is trying. You first develop that form in your head, and then you start to sort of do it in the CAD program. So all I'm doing right now is just kind of getting the important like design circumferences, and I'm putting them in the model so I could sort of see what my constraints are, where my wheel is gonna be. And that these are all just simple exercises to start like developing this wheel. But remember, this wheel is really more about the design. You know, it's not so much about the engineering criteria, you know, because when you're inside of a design studio, you're going to be developing a whole bunch of different designs, and 95% of them are never ever going to even leave the design studio. So it's really not that important to make them actually be able to be production right now. It's more about what the design intent is. So this is where I actually start to like design the wheel that is in my head. I kind of have a rough idea of what I want, but I haven't really developed anything. I haven't done any sketches. I haven't done, to me, this is kind of my sketch phase, because every time I sketch something out, I kind of get frustrated because I kind of think in 3D. So when I'm stuck to only using a 2D plane, you know, to me it's just worth it just to start already modeling in 3D, which isn't a very common work style, but it definitely that this is how how I do it myself. So right now, if you see that little shape I made, I'm just mimicking the shape that I see a lot in Electra, and just to make it so that it feels like the wheel is in the same sort of family that Electra is in. You know, this very angular, with a wide open towards the end kind of feel to it. You know, and obviously in the end, even that changes a lot. So I always try to remember this is very very loose, and it's gonna change a lot before it even gets better. To change the mirror plane of a layer, what you have to do is you have to select the layer, and then you have to go into layer, symmetry, set plane. And then there you click on the XY plane, and that will change it to a mirror on the other side, and you hit set plane. And so now my mirror is actually based on a different orientation than the typical side to side, because this is a wheel. And now I could kind of see what how that wheel will look like once it has symmetry. And I really remember, guys, to save often. I actually lost a bunch of these projects as I was filming this. I don't even know, this might be like the third time I filmed it, because once you start adding symmetry and grouping things and all that, it actually makes it fairly unstable for some reason. So remember to save often, and don't get too frustrated if you lose everything. You know, I actually, that happened to me a couple times, and it took me a while to sort of forget about it, but and get back in the horse. But luckily, I just went back at it and did it. So right now, all I'm doing is I wanna group these up into an object, and then I'm gonna make them into an instance. So if you see, make sure that you're in the right layer, and then select the group you just made, and then go to duplicate object. No, right there I accidentally put it in a mirror, but it's go edit, duplicate object, and then make sure that it's on instance. And right now, since it's going to be a six spoke wheel, I know that it's going to be 60 degrees, and it's going to be copies of 4. So and then remember there in geometry type to click on instance, and then that will make it so that it's easier to sort of like design. And see, as you can see here, just doing that, I kind of realized where, like, you know, that design wouldn't work, so I moved that out. And as you can see, everything moves and everything's like connected with each other, so it really makes it makes it a lot quicker to sort of design this wheel on the fly, you know, and then see in real time what those changes and angles would mean to the actual design. So this is kind of how I do my wheel designing. You know, just using very simple shapes, and then using my duplicate object command and mirroring, and then that way we could kind of you know, kind of go through a different iterations, as you can see what I'm doing here. It's a very powerful way of doing this sort of thing. Now, really, like I said before, a very fair warning. This actually makes it quite unstable, and I'm actually going to show you guys, if you want to add another like line to this group, how to do it. So even as you see here, it doesn't actually, this doesn't look like my final wheel, but you know, I kind of went through so many different design wheels just right now, just changing those lines, and it's a very powerful workflow. So as you can see here, I have this curve that isn't showing up in the rest of my model, and I want to add that line into my instance. So what I gotta do is go under Windows at Object Lister, and then I turn that on so I can see the different layers and open them up, and then I have to put that new curve into the appropriate node. But here I'm noticing that there's an extra node, and it's just I'm trying to figure out where this came from, and I can't really, I must have pressed group in accident, and that null node you know, got replicated. So once I delete that, I grab that curve and I middle mouse drag it down into the node, and as you see, once I did that, it added it into the instance. It also, for some reason, made another node group and another set of instances, and I have no idea why it did that. That's definitely an error on in Alias's side, and I want to just repeat myself again for like the 3rd time. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I lost this file like 3 times, and I was really mad. I remember to save often whenever you're doing anything with instances. So what I'm trying to do now is figure out what is what and delete the group of nodes that I don't need, just to keep everything as, even though it's not really affecting me, I know it's weird to me that there's 2 groups in that layer when all I've ever had was 1 group, and then and for some reason moving the instances around caused it to come up with these weird problems. And even as I do this, I'm also just, see, I just deleted one of the curves, and then that for some reason stopped the mirror. Honestly, to me, Alias 2019 has been very weird, and so what I'm doing now is I'm just ungrouping everything and deleting everything, just to make sure that I could kind of have a good clean model. So now I made sure that there's only 1 group, and all those instances are based off that 1 node, and now everything is a little cleaner and a little easier to work with. But I'm still very much in the design process. You know, I'm not sure if I like this look, if I wanted to go farther in, but obviously I'm just playing around with it right now. This is actually one of the ones that I lost modeling, and we're actually going to cut forward to the what my first initial design model looked like. And even though I know this might look like very complex, it's really the same exact steps, very simple straight lines. And if I hide the rest of the layers, you know, and I show you one by one, you can kind of see how it's slowly being like built up, you know. And this is very much how I usually design these sort of wheels, you know. Like, think about the main spoke, think about the secondary designs, and then the maybe the third design reads. And this is kind of what I kind of liked where we're going with this at this point. So I'm actually going to start doing some extremely quick surfacing, a very ugly surfacing, just to kind of see some shading and some lights, and give us a better idea of what this would look like if we actually went through the whole model and actually surfaced it. So now all I'm doing is just skinning between those straight 1 degree curves that I made. And I'm not really worried too much about the twisting that's going on, or the fact that they're all reaching one point right now, or you know, anything about like the integrity of the model, because all I'm trying to accomplish right now is adding some like very primitive surfaces in this design, so I could duplicate them and see what they look like. Maybe I'll add some simple transitions. So now I have all of these on the side, and I'm just kind of like taking a look around and trying to sort of figure out what's gonna happen behind those. You know, how are these elements gonna talk to each other, and you know, what color are they gonna be? So I start applying my shader, and and even changing it to like a darker tone. I'm using on under render apply shader, and yeah, that's these are all just simple little surfaces. And I'm even gonna add a little bit of a transition. All I'm gonna do is extend them back and add a freeform blend. Usually I don't even like to extend primary surfaces like that, but it's all that's I know that this is just a quick and dirty way of like just figuring out if it's something if this is the design direction I wanna take. You know, I'm not worried about the actual quality of the surfaces. I'm more want to like I'm just doing it really quickly. That curve is a blend curve, and it's under your curve toolbox. And I'm also going to use the freeform blend tool just to connect all of these together. And if you've seen any of my other videos, I'm very particular about all these transition surfaces and making them balance and all that. And right now I'm just throwing sort of caution in the wind, and I'm just kind of doing extremely dirty freeform surfacing. The whole point of this this step is just to see how it would look once I have some shading. And as you saw there, I didn't actually make an instance anymore. I actually just used geometric duplication, because it froze so many times using instances that I kind of like I was like, okay, I'll just you know, it doesn't need to be all of them connected to each other, because for some reason 2019 is not really stable when you use too many instances. But now this gives me a really good idea of the proportions and the look of the wheel. And looking back now, I could see that it was really floral, and I should have changed the proportioning at this stage. But I still wanted to. I should have. I didn't notice that until later. And now what I'm gonna do is actually sort of take a step back and slowly surface them, but surface them using rails, and making everything as clean as possible, and trying to figure out what the back end is gonna do. So this is really the part where I'm trying to figure out what how I could surface this design very quickly, and very structured, and doing a little last minute design changes. Now comes the trickiest part of this whole situation, is now that I sort of have an idea of the proportioning of the wheel, I want to actually start to develop the form, and make it so that it fits inside sort of this wheel, and that it's all very relative to itself. And this is one of the hardest parts of 3D modeling, is trying to, you know, solve that without having any previous model or anything like that. So I kind of take these steps very slow. I know that that outer line is gonna be flat against the spoke, and then I know that the top line that I'm moving back right now, that's gonna be a little bit deeper. So then I use the rail tool to which you can find it in swept rail, to make this nice straight like surface. And this is like the basically the beginning of my of this model. So now I'm just using the extend tool to get it in the right proportions. But obviously now the angles are completely different to the curve network I made. But that's because if you see my other videos, that's the whole point of those curve networks. We're just trying to get the design across, but we're not really paying too much attention to them. You know, they're more guides than anything. And using the rail tool, it makes it so that I have one clean sweep and one nice straight angle across. So that's how I sort of just slowly start building up the form. So after this, all I do is I skin between those two, just to kind of get a surface there that shows me that gap and those proportions. And actually here is a really good place to see how I just kind of rotate the model around, and I'm just trying to figure out what the next step is. You know, this is this is the part that really takes a long time to develop as a modeler. Being able to figure out, okay, how can I continue this structure using what I have, you know, without kind of like placing random surfaces in the air, you know? So that's why I'm sort of just rotating it around, saving the model, and just trying to figure out what the next step will be. I feel like in a lot of tutorials, this is kind of one of the parts that are missing. You know, a lot of times it's like, okay, right after this, you do this, you take this step, you do this step, and it's like you sort of see the perfect like path to get a model. And in my videos, I really try to show that it takes a while to figure it out, you know, and you know, just don't be discouraged when you don't know what the next step is, because I've been doing it for a really long time and I still find it very difficult to, you know, like solve it. But in the end, it's really, you know, all this is just a day of you know, of modeling. And if you could get a nice little wheel done in less than a day, then, you know, you're gonna be doing good. Honestly, most of the time you're working for weeks on a wheel, so don't think that this is very expectant of you inside of a car design studio. You know, these wheels, this would maybe as a very high level, high end modeler, you know, you could kind of accomplish these things, but no one's really expecting you to finish one whole wheel in a day. So as you see here, I'm just kind of like, I saw that these are connected, and I could you know, make a square right there and sort of slowly fill in this wheel, you know, color it the correct way to kind of see the proportions. And yeah, this is how I'm slowly building up this wheel. If you notice, I'm using a lot of rails. I'm trying to keep everything very straight. I'm not even adding any curvature to my curves, because actually I kind of like the design just being straight like that. You know, a lot of times people want to add curvature to everything, and maybe, I don't know, it's to me it's more about, you know, personal taste at this point. And yeah, maybe some people would like having a lot of curvature everywhere, but to me, I felt like this like really cool like mechanical wheel, it was okay to just be straight up, straight edges and skins and straight lines. And but see, if you see here, I'm just all there was is every if you notice, almost all my surfaces are built off each other, and this makes it so that whatever result I get, it ends up being as clean as you can get it, and everything is based off each other. So it's really a clean. And obviously, you know, this is just a simple wheel, but I use the same method, and with anything. And if you've seen my other videos, it's the same. If this video isn't like sort of like beginner friendly enough, I suggest you guys take a look at my cell phone videos. Those are a lot more step by step than this one. This is more about theory and accomplishing the task. Here I sort of realized that I need to cut those middle surfaces in half, and I need to rotate my whole model 30 degrees to the side so that I can sort of focus on the proportion a little differently. So I just get it and I rotate it 30 degrees, and then now that that's done, when I enable the mirror again, now I'm seeing it's still the same design except that I'm seeing the other end of it. So I felt like this proportion was a little easier for me to understand what shape I really wanted there, you know. I'm gonna start speeding things up a bit, so because it's really I'm just kind of doing the same. And then even though if you see here it's looks kind of simple, and it's almost like we haven't really done much because they're all very simple straight lines and surfaces. um, but once I quickly do duplicate and show them around, like, see, like, you notice that you're actually gaining a lot, especially with like a 6-degree wheel. You're getting a lot done pretty quickly, and then this is where I kind of realized, oh, okay, I'll just gonna connect these two together, and then from there I can make a straight line to the edge of the wheel. And now I have the sort of middle spoke that goes all the way to the side. So now that I have that middle spoke going all the way to the edge, I want to rail that other surface all the way up so I can sort of connect it. And now I just duplicate that rim curve and scale it, and now I have like the outer rim, and I cut off anything I don't need using the detach tool, not the trimming tool. I always try to keep everything edge to edge. I know I always say that like a bunch of times in my videos. And then now I'm sort of moving all of the, see, I'm projecting it and then trim converting it. And then that way I have a nice clean surface right there. And all those surfaces are simple and they're connected to each other. And there's no, there's no, everything's going to be positional. And yeah, so this is kind of how I'm kind of finding this sort of sculpture in space. And once I do the duplication, we can see we're kind of getting somewhere. It's a little too flowery, but at least we got a nice clean structure. I want to slow it down so I can show you guys how I make these like sort of extra design elements. I want to add a cutout into those things. So I'm going to isolate them, and then I'm going to insert a curve on surface using the insert tool. And then I'm going to add a curve which whatever angle I want, and one on the top. And then I'm gonna project those curves onto the surfaces, and that gives me a real quick way of cutting up and starting to develop these sort of secondary design elements. And just remember, every time you could always project, or you could always get a curve on a surface extrapolate it from a surface. But just try to keep everything as clean as possible, and then you start adding all the angles and all the cool cuts. Obviously it's all dependent on what your own taste is. But if you kind of like follow a good structure, the end result tends to be a good result. So here I'm just using a trim divide tool, and then I'm gonna color it blue, and see, now I could kind of see a secondary element of my design. And actually, this whole design element, I sort of just did it on the fly. Now when you look at this design, it's looking a lot like the finished wheel, and it doesn't look anything like the sort of previous wheel curves that we did. But the reason why is because that's how I sort of design. I kind of have an idea, and as I'm modeling it, if I kind of find a better solution or something that is more in line with it, I just kind of go that way. It really it's kind of a free flowing, but since I always use structure, they always tend to at least look balanced and that have nice form, and they're cohesive with each other. Okay, now we're down to the last like 10 minutes of the of this video, so please just hang in there. I know it's been long. Um, so now I'm actually what this section of the build, it's more now I kind of have that last model was my first like rough draft, and now I know what changes I want to make, and I have a better idea of how I'm gonna close out this form. So honestly, I wish that I could just sort of start the model like this, but and I feel like a lot of people would start a tutorial at this section, but it's like you don't really it's when you're developing the model, you don't really know what you know what you need, and it's really hard to have all of the sections in your head right off the get-go, you know? So it kind of takes this much time to get to this point, and now that I know what my model will be, and you know, I start to right now what I'm doing is I'm sort of thinking about the back end of this structure, you know, changing some of the depth that I didn't like, and making sure that this time around is like the last sort of like build, especially in the sense of the forms, you know, and the angles and the depth of them. Here I'm trying to figure out a good sort of in between spot between the angle and the depth of that spoke, you know, because I definitely want it to be a flat plane. I don't want it to twist. But I'm trying to find the one that doesn't look too thick, or from the side or from the middle, and that's why I'm using these like extensions and these rails to sort of help me with that, and um, and really it gives everything a good structure. If you see here, I use the revolve tool to find the back end of this of that spoke, and then I'm revolving it again so that I have a nice clean surface to sort of work with. You know, I use this a lot, and you'll see me in a couple minutes do it again for the back end of these spokes, and I'll try to explain it a little slower. But I'm using the revolve tool to based on the edge so that I can make it work. And now I'm deleting everything I don't need, and I'm extending back my old surfaces, and I could tell they're too shallow. So I'm gonna delete those surfaces, and I'm gonna just project some new curves on that, and then rail them. And then after that, I'm gonna extend them back and just to make them a little more squared up. And then I'm gonna use the intersect command, and now I have this sort of a closed up hole inside of or I guess more of like an indent inside of my spoke. But all of the lines are all completely straight, and they're intersecting each other very you know, mechanically, like there's no twisting or anything like that, so it always tends to look pretty good. And now I want to try to focus on the back end of this form. I actually ended up buying this brake model from Turbo Squid, just because I didn't feel like modeling a wheel, you know, or I mean a disc brake. A lot of times, you know, I'll grab assets online and just use that for my scenes, you know, just to fill up the scene more, make them look more real. So even though I am sort of trying to make it look like it fits and all that, I also know that this is just a design model, you know, and also inside of the design studio, you know, many times all this is gonna become is just one like a giant print, you know, or a small 3D print, you know. So no need to like really see if it's actually, you know, buildable, or we have the right dimensions. And now I actually want to build the back end of this spoke. So I'm gonna use the revolve tool, and I'm gonna click on that edge, and then after I make a revolve that goes down the middle, I'm gonna use my curve, and then slice it basically down the middle using project and trim convert. And this gives me a really quick way to sort of block out the back end of my surfaces, you know. That's how I sort of that's how I do a lot of this back end stuff for my wheels, you know. And obviously the more closed up your model is, the better for 3D printing. And also it just makes it, you know, I don't know, to me, I always try to close up everything I model, because this way it feels more real, And then many times, if the model does get approved, the next step would be, they have to actually be closed up. So it's always good to start like imagining that or trying to figure that out into your design element. And if you saw that with that line, I just I just got all that from the center surface, and then I just used that spoke as a rail, and then I just extended it back. So this way I have a nice clean spoke, and even the back end will be closed up. After this, all I'm doing is really just the much of the same actions. Using my revolve tool to close up the surfaces from the back end, and adding the different cuts, and just trying to make it as clean as possible and make sure that everything has position. So I'm aligning things up, adding a little more CVs at this point, so that they fit, and making sure that it's a nice a clean model. And this is what I consider the first like stage of the modeling process. The just blocking everything in. I would consider it, even though I think you guys probably saw about 4 hours of work. To me this is about days of work, just because even through a lot of this, I took a lot of breaks just to sort of try to wrap my head around it. It doesn't really ever come easy. It's not really that like it's not exactly intuitive at all to block in these things. So for this video, I think it's basically we're done. And the next video is going to be talking about more about adding the details, and even doing some further refinement into the surfaces and the alignment of the surfaces, adding all the offsets and all that. So I know this is a long video, and I'm not even sure if it was a good video. I don't know if it was a lot of learning. It seems very simple to me, but every time I post online, it seems people really want to see these. But don't be shy in the comments, and if this helped, let me know. And if it didn't help, that's also good too. If I rambled on too much, if I don't know, maybe I should focus on more 10-minute quick tutorials. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll try to finish the next videos this hopefully, maybe by next week, and I'll show you guys how I did all the quick fillets, and the offsets and the little different spoke elements and all that. But yeah, for this video, it just this to me is the first part of closing up a good shape, and building off that to the details later.